The 6th of November 2022. Welcome back to the channel Real True Education, Not Fake News. It's the 6th of November, as I said. Today was a very good day. The nights are longer than the days, but it was a very good day in Ireland. And so I'm going to deal here with the climate change summit, COP, held in Egypt. It's called COP 27. So it's held over in the desert country, a very hot country, and there's 40,000 attending. 40,000. A lot of them flown in by private jets, a lot of them at public expense, all gathered up from their own country with no naysayers allowed. Nobody giving an alternative view allowed. However, as someone who believes the whole climate scare is an elaborate hoax, and which something that even if it is a little true, and it can only be a little, we can't do a lot about it anyway. Al Gore in 2005, in a big video, The Inconvenient Truth, said the Arctic ice caps would be gone by now. They're there, the same as ever. Those pushing this lie to us, there's a process of Arctic and Antarctic ice called calving. The ice eventually has to fall into the sea. That's what sank the Titanic, a big iceberg, and that's happening. When that happens now, it's evidence of climate change. They're talking about the greater frequency of extreme weather events when the population of the world is getting so big that the people are living places they'd never be here tell of or never think about doing. And even in Ireland, they're living, because of the cost of housing, building houses in floodplains and all of this type of thing, which they would never do before. In the United Kingdom, Boris Johnson replaced Theresa May. He was under severe pressure to deliver Brexit, and he delivered a form of Brexit not yet complete. In that respect, he sort of did fulfill his promise. But he also gave the impression that he wasn't for this nonsense. Don't forget, David Cameron before him called it the climate crap, the green crap, he called it, the green crap. But Boris Johnson said that wind farms wouldn't pull the skin off a rice pudding. But when he got in, he turned completely Turk. He did not deal with immigration, which was meant to be with Brexit. But he continued on all this renewable and all this condemning fuel and all of this thing. Now, the next thing was Liz Truss replaced him. And the first thing she said she would do was she would allow fracking. Now, whether you agree with fracking or not, it was an indication of how she was thinking. And the minute she mentioned it, the knives were out. And one way or the other, they got her out of there. And it was partly the financial markets, the bankers, who will eventually bring down society and who destroyed it in 2008. It was ultimately them that started suggesting they wouldn't finance the British government. The one fault Liz Truss had was she was too soft. She should have dug the heels in at that stage. Once you go like that, your career's over. She may come back as some kind of a junior minister or something, but your career is sort of over. She should have stuck the heels in. Her predecessor, Margaret Thatcher, would not allow herself to be bullied, but still, it was a sign of how the world order, as they call them, or some type of secret society or some influence was acting. They were able to get her out, and no one seemed to notice at all in a month. Now, the next thing, Richie Sunak put his name in, and Boris decided to challenge him. Flew back from a holiday in the Caribbean. You see, if he had to stay away and keep out of it, somebody else might have ran. But no, he ran, and then he pulled out at the last minute, and then, of course, Sunak got in with only a vote from the MPs. There was no one opposing him, so the membership had no say. He immediately appointed Jeremy Hunt, who is who would be very well at home in communist China, possibly in North Korea. I don't think they'd have him there. A mad, rip-roaring, red, communist, green fanatic. And he appointed him as the Chancellor. That's the Finance Minister. As soon as Liz Truss got in, she said she wouldn't go to the climate summit. But and she banned Prince Charles from going. He wanted to go over and bum around there as well, but he can't be let do that, because if he gets involved in the politics of the UK, he'd split the country one way, and the next thing is there'll be no royal family. And they know that, and he probably knows it. But he would dearly love to be over there showing off. What did Richie Sunak then do? Now, bear in mind, he told Prince Charles also he couldn't go, and he said he wasn't going himself. He got the phone call. You're going. And he changed his mind. And he's heading over with he's over there with a big delegation. He said he had too much busy things to do with the economy the way it is and all of that. So you see, whoever's pulling the strings or whoever's doing it, we know they're climate mad. They're climate fanatics. We know they're nanny state mad. We know they're anti-fuel mad. But one of the consequences, and there are many, you have the irony of the German and the European government scrambling for fossil fuel. And after all, gas is a fossil fuel. And it's debatable if gas isn't worse on the environment than oil, because gas escapes and leaks. It's under pressure, whereas oil can be kept in a tank. But they've demonized fossil fuels so much that no company will invest the millions needed to build infrastructure, even if it's only an LNG terminal in the Shannon Estuary or something else. Nobody will invest. The only thing that they want them investing in is windmills and solar farms, and they're trying to do that, and I'm trying to stop them. So what's happening now, and you'll get several videos there on the internet, YouTube and them, there's a scarcity of oil, and there's a scarcity of diesel oil in particular. Diesel oil in particular. And it's bad in Europe, and it's bad in the United States. And a big load of diesel left Qatar about 3 weeks ago, came through the Suez Canal, and was on its way to Europe when it was diverted to the United States because they offer to pay more. It's the companies still have the say in that. So the companies were able to sell it in Europe at a price, and they got a higher price in the United States, and Europe missed that load of diesel. Now, here in Europe, we do have a little advantage in Ireland, not in Europe. We do have a little advantage in that we get some of our fuel from Norway. That might help a little bit only. But in the United States, there's only 21 days diesel left. Now, that doesn't mean there's going to be none. It means that there'll be a scarcity and the price will go up. And in Europe, I don't know what the procedure is in Europe. But you see what they've done? They've demonized fuel to such a degree that nobody's prepared to take the risk of investing. And it'll take 5 years to get the diesel production up. In America, there's a severe shortage of refining facilities. There's a severe shortage of refining facilities. They don't have enough refining facilities. I'm not sure the situation in Europe. I will check it later. But they don't have enough either, I presume. But if they did, they wouldn't be begging Qatar for it. So you have this situation. And may I just add as well, there's now some countries, there was an agreement that if fuel companies invested a certain amount and government changed policy to cost them money, they were entitled to compensation. And now the EU is doing away with that because, we're not going to invest in oil and fuel and gas. And so some countries are already pulling out. Now there's a 20-year period in which you have to legally support the fuel companies. In other words, if some fuel company opened a gas well in Mullingar in Ireland, and they invested €1 billion, they're entitled to exploit that for a certain length of time, and if they're not allowed to exploit it, the government has to compensate them for their loss. And that compensation has to last for 20 years. They're trying to get out of that now. So the point is, why should anyone invest in oil and petrol and other products when there's no guarantee that you'll be let sell it? Now, the other thing then is they're now round and round to ban the car. You'll not be able to get a new petrol or diesel car in Ireland in 2030, and I speak to many people who say, that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. That don't be doing. Well, a lot of the Toyota garages have no new cars at all. The forecourts are empty, and there's going to be a scarcity. I said that already. Now, anyway, that's enough with the UK. We see how the Green crowd what the power they have and the massive power they have. And this article here, which I read here from the journal, all eyes are on Egypt as tens of thousands of delegates, it's 40,000 of them, all paid for by the taxpayer, mostly arrived for the first day of COP27, a major international climate conference led by the United Nations. Are they doing anything to try and stop the war? I wonder. Is this all climate? Is this all the war they're doing? Negotiations will carve out climate commitments, meaning money, meaning taxes on fuel to pay somebody elsewhere. World leaders will try to paint their country's progress in the best possible light. That should be changed to world idiots will paint their country's progress in the best possible light. And experts, NGOs, Friends of the Earth, getting 500,000 a year, a few of them sitting around scratching themselves and getting these gigs. Didn't ask me to go over. Are closely watched to see whether there is any meat on the bones of the GOP. In other words, will they screw any more money out of the ordinary people? Among them will be the Irish delegation, comprised of politicians, officials and an assortment of expert campaigners. Who are the expert campaigners? They don't have Piers Morgan, an eminent senior climatologist who says this is all a complete cod. And they don't have Sir Patrick Moore, who is the founder of Greenpeace, who also says it's a complete cod, a complete nonsense. And plenty of others do the same. They select who they have. It is understood that the official delegation's focus will be on issues such as loss and damage caused by climate change. Where is this happening? It's not happening anywhere in Ireland. They took the turf out of the Midlands and the River Shannon floods, and it was flooding in 1960. Financial support for developing countries. They don't want the bloody support. They'd rather be let go on and develop their own fuel. And in Uganda, the European Union is trying to dissuade them from exploiting their oil. In other words, keep them poor and keep them dependent on the EU. But they're saying we'd do our own thing. Thank you very much. Now, so financial support for developing countries and emissions reductions in line with the Paris Agreement goal of limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. 4 cabinet ministers are making the trip. 4 of them. Well, at least while they're away, they won't be able to do as much damage. Taoiseach Micheál Martin, Minister for Foreign Affairs Simon Coveney, Minister for State for Overseas Development Aid Colin Brophy, and Minister for the Environment and Climate Change Eamon Jackass Ears Ryan. The government is also sending officials from several other departments. The whole bloody lot of them is getting a junket, the best of food, and agencies, who will be joined by university staff, all public servants, all appointed, all promoted by the government, and students, charities and climate campaigners. But why wasn't I invited? Who decided who'd go? What do you do if you go over there? Can you tell them they're a shower of idiots? The Taoiseach is due to deliver Ireland's national statement to the conference tomorrow afternoon during the World Leaders Summit. World Leaders. He's a population of 4.25 million. which sees heads of state and government convene for 2 days, according to a provisional list of speakers. Last year, he used his speech at COP26 in Glasgow to state that those of us in the developed world, those who have frankly contributed to most of the problems that confront us all, have an obligation to support those most acutely challenged by its consequences. In other words, what he's saying is let the polluter pay. Why is it then that UK generated coal-fired electricity imported into Ireland does not have a carbon footprint in Ireland where it's used? And energy and electricity from Ireland exported to the UK is billed to Ireland. Why does he call us as contributing to the problem when he let in 1,000 and more megawatts of data centers when we only need a very little? He let them all in here without ever a question. And he tries to blame the ordinary people. It was his government that could have prevented them coming in, and now they want the farmers to give up their farming and the data centres to expand. Ireland accepts that obligation, he asserted. Oh yes, it accepts it according to his terms. During his 2 days at the summit this year, he will participate in several high-level events. I'll bet you he'll participate in the dinners anyway, and the dessert, and all this. I think he's too mean to drink a glass of wine. I'd say he's so mean that he wouldn't put his hand in his pocket for a bun. I'd say that's how mean Micheál Martin is. And roundtables on food security and the sustainability of vulnerable communities. The fact is, the problems in a lot of Africa over the years was war. And the fact is that he took no active part in preventing the war in Ukraine and trying to settle that before it got going. He will meet President of Ghana. Now, Ghana is a country like Ireland, and if they exploited their agriculture, we would have severe competition. It is a great country, I understand. I wasn't in it. President Nana Akufo-Addo and German Chancellor Olaf Scholz. What is he meeting him for? Isn't he after opening 23 coal mines? 23 coal mines and the same amount of coal-fired power stations. And he would shut down his carbon-free nuclear energy. So what's he going to tell him? A working breakfast on finance for vulnerable communities and several bilateral meetings and other leaders. Would he ever go down the street in Main Street, Dublin, and see the poor people lying on the street in the depths of winter? Old women, old men, young people, Irish. There's a few misfortunes in every society. He's bringing in hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians, hundreds of thousands of Africans. He was ticked off in the EU by the Swedish minister, who pointed out that there was 500 million wanting to come here. Would he ever go down and see his own people? No. He blathers around and gets away with this and gets away with it in the media, and the jackasses of voters in Cork will return the damned idiot as soon as they get a chance. So bilateral meetings and unilateral and bilateral and all this old baloney, as if anyone gave a damn about the unilateral and bilateral. Meet face to face. They can't use common language. Before his arrival tomorrow, the Taoiseach said in a statement today that climate change is the single greatest challenge the world faces. Imagine that. How can he ever improve Ireland's lot? How can he ever work for the people of Ireland, or indeed assist the people of Europe in the terrible crisis they are now in, facing freezing to death, facing blackouts and all this, when he has this grandiose big picture in his mind? Oh, don't worry about all that. Don't worry about all that. It's climate change. Oh, we're going to tackle it. You'd think he was going to take on Colin McGregor in one of the mixed martial arts. Tackle. You tackle. The bottom line is the EU is craving fuel. They're storing fuel. They have admitted in practice they can't do without it. And the German industries and Herr Scholz are partly closing down because the Russians cut the gas off them. Why don't they present a big medal to Vladimir Putin for cutting down on fossil fuel? See. And its effects are already felt across extreme weather events and consequences are fueling conflict. Where are the... It didn't... As he tried to tell us that the most significant war at the moment affecting Europe is caused by climate change? Did Vladimir Putin invade the Ukraine because he was worried about climate change? What a genius transformation needed to secure the sustainable future of the planet and its people. It is very clear that some of the countries that contributed least to climate change are bearing the brunt of its impacts. No, they're not. They were robbed blindo. An unfortunate African farmer growing coffee is not allowed to process it and sell it into the EU. It has to be brought in raw. And if he is making chocolate from cocoa, if he grows cocoa, he cannot set up a factory, or no cooperative in Africa can set up a little factory and start making fair trade type coffee, or chocolate. He cannot make bars of chocolate and put a picture of the jungle on it and things like that and let us buy it in the EU. It's strictly forbidden. The Belgians and the Dutch and the British and the Irish and those, but particularly those in Belgium and Holland, they are the chocolate tubs with their lint and all their other stuff. They're on top. They control the market, and no African is getting in there to sell processed chocolate. He can sell the raw product, and they'll do it. And these are the hypocrites that try to tell us that they're worried about the impact on these people. They're trying to stop them develop. And I think we're very rapidly coming to a position where the EU and America be told to hump off, and you'll see China, India, and Russia and Africa getting together, and they'll ignore the whole lot, because it's Europe that destroyed Africa going back 300 years, taking them as slaves and abusing them and taking all they had. And these countries takes a long time to get used to freedom and dealing with it, and they're a very mixed bag. Don't forget, Gaddafi was a dictator there, but they soon killed him once he started talking about his own currency. I expect that climate change will be a prominent issue in our discussions at the summit, and I hope that developed countries will step up, ensuring the commitments entered into in the previous meetings are delivered. What the hell is he on about? What is he on about? The Taoiseach will be followed shortly afterwards by Simon Coveney, Colin Brophy of the Department of Foreign Affairs, who is expected to be looking in particular at issues linked to security and supports for vulnerable countries. And he can't mind his own. He can't mind his own, because voters in Dunleary don't give two damns about their own Irish people who are sleeping on the street. They'd rather worry about some fictional big thing on the global scale, and they'll go back and they'll vote for them old Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil and other lugs, and they'll vote for them big time. And that's what they'll do. They don't care about their own, and a lot of our neighbours and friends care nothing. All they think about is themselves and what they'll get. And this is something that's pricking at their conscience. In September, Minister Brophy travelled to Kenya and South Sudan in the Horn of Africa, which experienced devastating food shortages. Why didn't he send them over a few load of stuff? Why didn't he send them over? In fact, Putin allowed the grain to go over. And when the EU got Putin to allow the grain to come out, they wouldn't give it to the Africans. Only 3% went to them. He went to block it again, and now they're letting a bit more in. This is the hypocrisy. Whole communities are having their way of life destroyed. Our own children cannot get houses in Ireland with these creeps. Finally, Climate Minister and Green Eamon Ryan is due to attend the second week. He'll do some humming and bumming around there to represent. He is expected to promote greater ambition in accelerating the move away from fossil fuels and calls for climate change for vulnerable communities. So why is he running away from fossil fuels when the whole of the world is running towards it? We're going to have a price to pay. Folks, I'll cut this video short. Thanks be to God, we'll have an election in America on Tuesday. And with any bit of luck, they'll kick the Democrats out on top of their heads and let in some bit of sense. And hopefully then, when that's done, Biden will be a lame duck and we'll get some other solid candidate, whether it's Trump or somebody like him, in that will chuck the whole thing out. Because until we get rid of these creeps, we'll never have any comfort. We have the same in Italy, where and we have the same happening in Sweden. They got rid of their environmental department. Slowly but surely, these crowd are on the back foot. We have them sort of on the run. I don't think Greta Thunberg's appearing at all. We have them sort of on the run, and hopefully they'll have a failed summit, because it can only be failed. They know they wouldn't be panicking over home heating and all that if they didn't know that failure to keep people basically warm will mean they'll lose their seats. Folks, that's it. Give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. You can read about it there in the journal, more about it. An opportunity, old baloney, old nonsense, old, it's like the councils here with their annual report talking about matrices and all this, forcing civil service to write Balcom. And this is the way. But these crowd, you cannot get promoted in any section of the Irish public service unless you're climate nuts. And you see, they're slowly but surely getting their people in there. And this needs a damn good kick out and a damn good ending. Hopefully, the good people in the United States will do the right thing on Tuesday and get rid of as many Democrats as possible. Folks, I'll see you back. Either tell me I'm right or wrong and give me a thumbs up. And if you don't like it and you're a green nutter, give me a thumbs down. I don't mind. Bye. We'll see you back. Thank you.